Life Audio.
This is Empowering Homeschool Conversations.
We want families to come here and gain insightful strategies that empower them to successfully teach diverse learners at home.
Hosted by founder and CEO of SPED Homeschool, Peggy Ployer.
Our goal is that these powerful weekly conversations will boost your confidence to cultivate the best at-home learning environment for your student.
For more homeschool resources, go to spedhomeschool.com. You're listening to Empowering Homeschool Conversations with Peggy Ployer. We'll start the conversation with Peggy and her guests next.
2 weeks old in an iron lung, which is, like a sealed oxygen unit, fighting for my life. I couldn't breathe properly. And apparently I didn't make a sound from the day I was born because my lungs were all messed up.
That's Martin Smith of Delirious sharing a personal testimony on The Walk, a podcast for worshipers. Join us weekly to hear songwriters, worship leaders, filmmakers, and other creatives tell stories in the form of a devotional. The Walk can be found on lifeaudio.com or your favorite podcast platform.
The Historical Jesus Podcast is the sweeping saga of the life and times of Galilean Jesus of Nazareth, as well as the faith, religion, and church founded to honor and disseminate his acts and teachings. Join me, Mark Vinette, on this fascinating journey through time, exploring the many great works of Christian theology, literature, architecture, music, and art inspired by the words and deeds of Jesus Christ.
This is Empowering Homeschool Conversations, provided by SPED Homeschool, a nonprofit that empowers families to home educate diverse learners. To learn more, visit spedhomeschool.com. Here's Peggy Ployer.
Today, we are going to talk about shared lessons, embracing and cultivating support in homeschooling. And my special guest today is Heidi St. And I'm just going to read your bio really quick. Heidi is the author of several books, including Becoming Mom Strong, How to Fight with All That's in You for Your Family and Your Faith. And it's corresponding Becoming Mom Strong Bible Study and Mom Strong 365, a one-year devotional to encourage and empower everyday moms. Her podcast, Off the Bench with Heidi St. has been downloaded over 20 million times and is available wherever podcasts can be found. The Mouse in the Sea is Heidi's latest venture into the world of children's literature, combining her passion for storytelling with powerful life lessons, carries a message not only for children, but also for mothers, encouraging them to forget the do-it-all mentality and not be afraid to lean on others to help with the overwhelming load of parenthood. Heidi has been married to Jay, her college sweetheart, since 1989. The St. John's reside outside beautiful Vancouver, Washington, where their nonprofit organization, Firmly Planted Family, and the Homeschool Resource Center are based. St. John's have 7 children, all of whom have been homeschooled, and 4 grandchildren. Welcome, Heidi, to the show.
Hey, thanks for having me. I'm glad to be here.
Absolutely. I'm glad to have you on. I know Steve Demmy's been encouraging me a lot to get you to be on the show. And so when your agent reached out, I was like, yes, of course.
I love him. Oh, yeah. That guy's a keeper.
Yeah, well, he was my last guest, and he also has been he was the chair of SPED Homeschool for 3 years, and he stepped down to co-chair this year, but has been an amazing friend and resource and mentor to me, too. So
I love that.
Just encourage him. Last week, our conversation with him was about just how God has surprised him with the gift of his son that has Down syndrome and taught him so many lessons that of how God can use people that we often dismiss, and just how it's been a blessing to him and his wife. So that's very encouraging.
Yeah, it's wonderful. He and I have had many conversations over the years. And in fact, it's funny. I was just talking about him on this show a couple of days ago. I was talking about him because he had encouraged me years ago when I was speaking for a conference in Hilton Head. And it was just an audience I wasn't used to, in an environment I wasn't used to, and I was nervous. And he happened to call, and I said, could you pray for me? And he said, yeah, I'll pray for you, but you already know what you're supposed to do. You're the fragrance of Christ. You're supposed to just stink up the place. Like everywhere you go, people should be like, hey, that there's something different about that woman in all the good ways, because Jesus shines through you. So anyway, he just, such an encourager. Absolutely.
Absolutely, he is. Yeah. So this new book of yours, The Mouse in the Sea, can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah. Well, first of all, I jumped at the chance to work with Brave Books. Like a lot of people, I've been watching what's been going on with that company. I love their idea of just getting good books into the hands of kids. And when they approached me and asked if I would be interested in being their newest author, of course, I was like, absolutely. So, I'm writing about something that I'm passionate about, which is help, so that's been sort of the theme of my life. And for, oh my goodness, the last several books that I've written have all been about moms, not pretending to be super mom. Hey, can we just ask for help? And so the story is about this little mouse, Mr. Mouse, who has the gift of help. And you can see it from the very beginning, right? So he sees, he has most of his friends who live in the ocean in this particular story. And so he gets suited up, gets a deep diver suit, he goes down into the ocean and he sees his friend, the seahorse, who has a cold. He's a little horse, right? So he gives him some soup, and then he sees an orca who has, I think, like a toilet seat stuck around his teeth. And so he figures out how to wedge it off of it. And then, so there's all these little scenarios where he sees his friends are in need of help and he helps them. But then when he needs help, his friends offer to help him and he refuses the help, because after all, he doesn't need it. He can handle it on his own until, of course, he gets taken by the bad guys. And then all of his friends end up going, we're going to go help that guy anyway because he really needs it. So the book is for children, but I think there's a really good message in there, especially for homeschool moms who, a lot of these moms, they're going to die of very unnecessarily of martyr mom syndrome,
right.
because we just didn't want to ask for help. And, as a mother of 7, 6 of our 7 have graduated now from our homeschool. But I can tell you there have been many, 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 many years when, if it hadn't been for the help of other mothers, it's why we started the homeschool cooperatives. It's the reason why 20 years ago we started Firmly Planted Family, and now we run the Homeschool Resource Center here in Vancouver, Washington, have about 700 students. And the whole premise of this place is that if a mom comes to me and says, okay, uncle, they're teaching my kids that there's, 400 genders and they could be a narwhal whale on Friday if they want to be. So I can't do it anymore. I've taken my kid out of the school, but I just don't think I have it in me to figure out how to teach biology. I got you. Because we have a biology tutor for you, or we have a chemistry tutor, or if you want your kid to be in dance, we've got dance classes here. So I call this sort of choose your own adventure homeschooling. But the idea is that there is a incredible community here that comes alongside and helps. And that's really the theme of The Mouse in the Sea.
Oh, that's so awesome. And it's something that, even as I was looking for graphics for this broadcast to put up on after the live one went down, to find people in community that aren't just in their family is almost impossible. Yep. And because we as a society don't even value that anymore. Yeah. And it is so hard to convince people the opposite way, that you need this more than you think you do, more than you understand that you do. Can you share a story with us of somebody that, or just something that either in your past experience or in what you've seen in your resource center, of somebody realizing that, I really did need this and I didn't think, I thought I could do it all myself.
Yeah. Well, I mean, the resource center for sure. I mean, we see this every day, but one of my favorite, I could tell you stories all day long, but one of my favorites is, happened a couple of years ago, kind of in the middle of the Rona, in the middle of the lockdowns, when the schools were just on fire, and my husband and I refused to normalize the abnormal for children. And so we kept the resource center open after the customary, 2 weeks when we were, when everybody was closed down. But after that, we just had such a sense that it was going to be important for these families to have a place to come. And this mom who had just taken her kid out of the public school, she came to the center and she had enrolled her daughter in some classes, and she was very quiet when she first came. She wasn't really, sure, like, who are these crazy homeschoolers, what's going on with these people? But what was so amazing was that after, I want to say, maybe about 3 or 4 months, she came to the front desk like she didn't, often ask a question or checking in or whatever. And she just started crying. And she said, I can finally see my daughter again. I have my daughter back. This woman she knew that she was missing something, but she wasn't sure how to get it back. And we gave her the opportunity to do that. So just an amazing, it's just an amazing place. And it just goes to remind everybody, hey, we need each other. We need each other. Yeah. And so we find, we were created for community. And even though we all have social media, have access to social media, which frankly is killing us.
It is.
We've pulled away from these in-person opportunities, which is why I'm such a super fan of homeschool conferences. I tell people, yes, you can take an online course. Yes, you can listen to the Heidi St. John podcast or Sped Homeschool. You can listen to all these things. Right. Nothing takes the place of in-person, going out to coffee with that mom. Every homeschool mom should have a mom that she can call at the drop of a hat and be like, I can't do this anymore. And whoever that voice is on the other end of the line is going to go, oh, girl, you need a mocha with extra whip and sprinkles. I will be there. I will be there. And I just think, boy, we've lost that in our connection. We're so connected, right? We're connected on the internet. We're connected on social media. We're just connected. But the connection's a garbage connection. It's like listening. It's like trying to listen to a conversation when there's static in the background, Or if you're Heidi St. John and you're starting to get older and you realize, oh, okay, I need to quiet some things around me because I can't actually hear with all the noise, with the background noise. Right. And to me, social media and all this stuff is just background noise. And I like to see us get back to that really, that in-person, those conversations, that mentoring. I think I hope, and I'm so thankful for moms like you who have a lot of experience in homeschooling, who, when you get to the end of your journey, don't just go, okay, well, that was good, I'm out. No, you're coming back and you're helping the moms who really need to hear from the moms who've been there and done that and can say, hey, don't give up. It's worth it. Hang in there.
Right. Absolutely. It's like comparing meat and potatoes to the candy. It's like you don't get the nourishment, the feedback, everything that you really need by just popping onto social media and saying, oh yeah, I, listened to the podcast. I followed the directions the blog told me I'm good. Yeah. Because it's when you get into those deep conversations with your friends and they ask you really, how are you doing? And you kind of just fall apart. And we need to have people that speak like that into our lives. And so I'm so excited that, you have that ability to cultivate that type of community for people within your area. After a word from our sponsor, we'll dive back into this conversation.
Scripture and brain science agree. Meditating on God's Word transforms us and reduces stress in our lives. I'm Jody Nisnik, host of So Much More, Creating Space for God, a scripture meditation podcast. And each week, I give you space to hear God's Word, listen to the Spirit, and pray about what's on your heart. And then we have a thoughtful conversation with guests to help us go deeper. Listen and subscribe at lifeaudio.com.
This is Empowering Homeschool Conversations, provided by Sped Homeschool. Go to spedhomeschool.com to get resources and support for teaching your unique learner at home.
Are there any suggestions you have for people that really feel like I have nowhere to go? How do they even start? We have usually a big onslaught of new homeschoolers right after the holidays. People kind of pull their kids out of school. And so there's a lot of people out there right now going, how do I even find a connection? How do I get my community?
Well, I always tell people, there are so many resources now there's no reason that anybody, unless you live in the Yukon, there's really no reason for anyone to do this alone anymore. And so I like to tell people, the first thing I always did was I looked in my community, and for goodness sake, you can get on Facebook, and all you got to do is Google homeschool, and there's going to be a group in your area. There's a million of them where I live now, right? Firmly Planted just happens to be one of the first, and so it's probably the biggest. But they're all over the place. You can go to the Homeschool Legal Defense Association, hslda.org, and you can click on the state, your state that you're from. You can find the state leadership, and usually if you can get a hold of state leadership, they'll connect you locally. So to me, there's no excuse for doing this alone anymore. And I answer questions at my podcast every single week from homeschool moms who are just, they're desperately in need of that community, but they don't know where to find it. And so I think people like you, we out there and we just keep saying, there's so much help. We don't need to do this alone. So hslda.org for sure. And I'm a super fan. Like, as much as I don't like social media for all the reasons, I also think that there are some good things that can come out of it. The in-person meetings. We use social media all the time here at Firmly Planted to say, hey, we got stuff going on. For example, we're doing a marriage conference here in Vancouver. Phil Gunger, do you remember Laugh Your Way to a Better Marriage? So
I don't.
Oh my word, it's so much fun. So they're coming here to do that for the community in Portland, like the Portland, Vancouver metropolitan area. And we've got people flying in from around the country because I'm here to say your marriage is worth investing in. So get up off your couch and invest in it. Right? Bring your wife, bring your husband, and come and just spend a weekend remembering why you got married in the first place. And we could have done that online, but we're doing it in person because it's so important. It's really important.
It is. And it's important for those dads and as for couples to be together too. I know our church is big community based. Yep. And so everybody in our church belongs to a community group, and to get together with couples every week and be part of each other's lives, that just takes it even one step further than just my girlfriends and I. And a lot of times dads get left out.
Yes.
It's so important for them to have community just as much. They invest in your homeschool. We can't just say, well, my mom can do it alone. And
right. Yeah, it's true. And I wonder if, sometimes, that really does lead to the martyr mom thing, where after a while you're just like, no one loves me. No one's listening to me. I'm by myself. No one cares. Well, people do care, but you're going to have to get out there and say, I need help.
Yes. Absolutely.
And I think that is the first. To me, that's the first step toward healing to the homeschool. It's just to say, okay, I need help. And honestly, this is why the Mouse in the Sea and, everything that Brave is doing resonated with me, because it's not only just are we putting great books and the Freedom Island Book Club and all that into the hands of kids. Yeah. We're saying to them, there's something bigger happening. Than just you read a story to your child. You sit down and you've got that little one on your lap or whatever, your grandkids, in my case, your grandkids around you, and you're able to say, I'm going to invest this time because I realize the time is where the treasure actually is. That's where you find it. And so it's kind of bringing back story time. I love that I've been able to partner with, over the years, companies that are just phenomenal and meet really good people, because the news cycle, right? The 24-hour news cycle is just bad news all the time. It's bad news in the morning, bad news in the middle of the day, bad news at night. Yeah. And, and I am a bit of I ran for Congress here a couple of years ago, and I'm a little bit of a newsie. And so I like to listen to the news, but I'll tell you what, it can get downright depressing. And also it's not even a real picture most of the time of what's happening around the dinner table. There are wonderful people who God has given the gift of help to. I think you're one of those people, right? God put it on your heart. You've had a specific life experience, and instead of having that life experience, you just, you keep what you learned to yourself. Right. You go, I wonder if there's other people that are struggling with this. And lo and behold, there are, right? And so you're taking what you've learned and you're investing in the lives of other people. That is what we're supposed to be doing. And it just, it's really encouraging. It's encouraging to me.
Yeah, we had a comment from one of our viewers on Facebook about your new book, and she said, "Sounds like an amazing story for kids and adults alike. You are correct. Having a homeschooling village is so important. You do not need to do it alone. Thank you for all that you do." Thank you, Kimberly, for saying that.
I love that. I love that.
Yeah.
Oh,
It's hard, and especially when, with my community, this community that listens to this broadcast, they have special needs kids. And we can have this mentality of nobody's going to get it. My child's going to ruin this relationship. And we shut down the wall or the doors. We shut them just without even thinking that there may be a possibility that God may have somebody out there.
Yeah.
We just dismiss that he can do that.
Yeah.
Can you speak into that a little bit?
Yeah. Well, I mean, you and I both have been, I have not had special needs children, but I've been around a lot of moms who have, because we help them here at the center all the time. And I think, first of all, we have to be really careful not to listen to the lies of the enemy, right? Because it's the enemy that sort of gets in there and he says, you can't do this. And honestly, you don't have to be the mother of a special needs child to feel that way, right? Yeah. You can feel that way no matter what. I was cleaning out, we had like I was telling you before we recorded, we've kind of in the middle of a weird weather event here.
Yes.
And so I had a day off, which for me is just super unusual. Like I could not even get out of my driveway. And I was like, yes, I can't go to work today. This is amazing. This is the happiest day of my life. I'm going to stay home, make some more sourdough bread, whatever.
Right.
Well, I decided because it's me, I'm going to rearrange my bedroom today. So I'm, rearranging things and moving bookshelves and moving things out of my room. And I've decided, in my old age, I'm turning into sort of this minimalist mom, like I'm just kidding. If I don't need it, it is going.
Yes.
Like I haven't sat at that desk in 4 years. It is going. I mean, I'm going to open up the space on my wall. So there was I journal. I'm kind of a journaling junkie, and I don't deal with any sort of consistency, unfortunately. So I have 75 sort of started journals, right?
Oh, yes.
So,
I'm the same way.
yeah. So I've got a whole bunch of, sadly, some of them are really pretty journals, and I start them and then I forget, life gets busy, or I forgot I burned the spaghetti or whatever it is. Yeah. And then I can't find the journal. So I start another one. Well, so I have all these journals from, 35 years of marriage. Well, I'm taking them off my shelf and I'm just putting them someplace different. And, I happened to open one. And it was the day, and in fact, I took a picture of it and sent it to my girls. It was the day that I pulled our daughter, Savannah, out of the public school. And in fact, look, it's on my phone because I sent a picture of it to my daughter. And here's what's so cool about this. I'm reading this to her, and I had said that, it was just kind of the last day of school is what I called it. It's so weird. Even my handwriting looks different. My handwriting looks like the handwriting of a young woman, and now my handwriting is a little different. But I said that, her teacher, her name was Mrs. Dorton. I said, I felt very bad today. I walked into Mrs. Dorton's room. I looked at all the artwork on the walls. I looked at the playground toys. I thought of my own experience at a private Christian school, which was a very fond memory for me. Mrs. Dorton, Savannah's teacher, was kind to me. So now keep in mind, I'm getting ready to pull my daughter out of public school. No one in my family has ever done this before, but I just knew God was asking me to do it. I said, Mrs. Dorton was kind to me. I told her we were mainly concerned that we might move, and I didn't want to uproot her again. There was more to it, but I didn't want to bring it up. Later in the meeting, I felt secure enough to show her the history and math curriculums that I had chosen. She loved both of them, and I felt much better. She was so encouraging to me. But when the evening came, the feelings of insecurity returned. I began to ask myself, why am I doing this? Can I really do it? Will my children resent me for doing it? Will it negatively affect my relationships with my kids? And I went on to just, talk about how the Lord used my husband that night to sort of come in and sort of re-center me and remind me why we were doing what we were doing. But my point in saying that is everyone feels like they can't do it.
Exactly.
For me, it was just coming from a completely dysfunctional family background, which is why I wrote Becoming Mom Strong. And now here God's taking Heidi St. John, a woman who cannot keep houseplants alive, and he's asking her to homeschool children. And I was like, no, I mean, the one with the special needs really was me. I was like, I'm the one who's going to need extra attention and extra help and someone to peel me off the ceiling and all the things. And what I always tell moms, and I think this is really important, God says in his word that his grace is sufficient.
Absolutely.
He doesn't say my grace is sufficient if your marriage is perfect. My grace will be sufficient if if you end up with, a little Einstein, then my grace will be sufficient. He doesn't say my grace is sufficient if you've got all the help that you need or you're in the perfect community. He doesn't say any of those things. He just says my grace is sufficient, for the power of God is found in weakness.
Absolutely.
That's where it's found. And so when a mom comes to me, whether she has special needs, my sister Holly has a daughter with Down syndrome. And I think she's 24 now. And I remember the day that Kendall was born, massive hole in her heart. When she was just a few hours old, they did open heart surgery and all the things to save her life. That girl is a treasure. I do not know what my sister Holly would have done, but for the birth of that child.
Wow.
And I've watched over the years as, different moms come from different walks of life. Sometimes you come and you've got, your marriage is in trouble, or you've got a child. Like I had one of my 7 children who shall go unnamed. Gave me a run for my money. This child, if I said stand up, she sat down. If I said it was green, she said it was blue. If I said we're doing math today, she was like, not me. I remember one time I was like, I'm going to spank you. So I spanked her and she goes, well, that didn't hurt. And I was like, oh yeah, well, and she just brought me to the end of myself. I just thought, I can't do this. I can't homeschool her. She doesn't respect me. She's not listening. And I remember in those moments, and this is how I have kept at it for 27 years. His grace is found in weakness. So if you feel weak today, if you feel unqualified, you're right where he wants you, because God wants the glory. He doesn't want you to get to the end of your homeschool journey, special needs or not, and go, well, I wouldn't be able to do that except for I found sped homeschool. And that was the answer to all my problems.
Right.
He doesn't want you to get to the end of your homeschool and go, well, I would have quit, but I heard Heidi St. John speak at a homeschool No, he wants us to get to the end of our journey, fall flat on our face, lift our hands to the heavens and say, thank you, Jesus. That was all you. He wants the glory.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And nobody better to give him the glory than a mom who feels weak in her calling, because that's when our eyes are turned heavenward.
Beautiful. Yeah, perfectly said. And we do. We want to get it all together, and then I can go out and do this. Well, the problem is we're never going to get it all together, and so we have to do it where we're at, and it teaches our kids a lesson too. It teaches them that they don't have to have it all together too. Yes. And what a powerful thing that we teach in what we do versus in what we just say. Yeah. And that's the experience our kids are going to take. And we don't have to be perfect. Our kids just have to see that we're looking to the one who is perfect. So I love that.
And you don't have to have the answers either. I mean, I think we don't need the answers. We need to be able to direct our kids to the one who has the answers. And I think one of the beautiful things about homeschooling is that it teaches you to look things up all the time. You know how many times over the years I've been like, okay, there has to be a better way to teach long division. So I'm on YouTube, like shortcuts to long division. I graduated from high school, just, thought to myself, hallelujah. I will never have to look at another math book again. Wrong. I'm in like the 7th level of math hell, with 7 kids. And, today we're on lesson 7,942 of geometry. I mean, for me, because I've been doing this since I was in high school, and now here I am 50 some years old and I'm still doing it. And I just think there's a beautiful thing that God does. So like, I don't teach math anymore. I found a helper. I found someone to help me, right? Because I was like, I'm going to lose my mind. I'm going to go crazy. But I didn't have a support system, so I created one. And that support system that the Lord prompted me to create now has helped thousands and thousands of other moms and their kids. I love Psalm 121 verse 2. It says, my help comes from the Lord who made heaven and earth. So we have to teach our kids. We look to the Lord. Like, we do what God asks us to do, but the very first thing is to look to the Lord. My help comes from the Lord. My help doesn't come from Rebecca. It's not going to come from Heidi St. John. I mean, God might use Rebecca. God might use Heidi St. John, but my help ultimately, it's like the provision of the Lord. Years ago, my husband was a pastor for 20 years. And then we started a nonprofit organization, got even more broke than we were as a pastor's wife.
I know that, the feeling.
Yeah, right. Start a nonprofit, they said. It'll be fun.
Mm-hmm. Oh,
so we see there's a need. So we start this nonprofit. And I remember very clearly one day, here we were just struggling to make ends meet, because you got to have people got to be willing to give to it, because you can't get paid unless people give to it. And even if we sold the nonprofit, it doesn't belong to us. So there's nothing to be gained. You have to give it away. Mm-hmm. And someone said to me the other day, wow, it's so neat, Firmly Planted Family, it's a big ministry now. It's probably a multi-million-dollar ministry. It's been around for 20 some odd years. But they were like, so amazing. You guys could retire. You could sell it. I'm like, you don't understand. It's a nonprofit. Like, I don't own it. So I can't benefit from it financially if I wanted to. Right. And I remember at one point feeling pretty sorry for myself, right? Because here we're just pouring and pouring and pouring into this thing. And we are having a hard time just staying afloat as a family. Yeah. And I was kind of whining and complaining. We live with Jay's mom, my husband's mom, and I was making dinner and kind of whining and complaining. And I said, maybe we just need to go back to our normal jobs. Like, I go back to just being a homeschool mom, and Jay goes back to full-time church work again, because I feel like that's what we're supposed to be doing. She said, well, why? I said, well, because of the whole provider aspect, right? Jay's saying he really wants to be a provider, but we're out here trying to do this nonprofit thing, and that's making it really hard. And she goes, why do you think Jay's your provider? And I was like, well, because, and I realized what she was saying, and I'm like, ooh, I fell into your Bible trap. I see what just happened, right? I see what happened. And she was like, who's your provider? Well, it's the Lord.
Right.
And not only does he provide for his children financially when we need it, and we learn about the Lord along the way. He's rarely early, but he's never late.
Yes.
Right.
Oh,
right on time in God's economy. True. And she just reminded me, your provision comes to the Lord. Ask and it will be given to you. Seek and you will find. Knock and the door will be open to you. Go to the Lord. He's your provider. He's your help.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Man, these are lessons we need to learn.
Yeah. Yeah. And we do learn them best when we've run out of other options.
Yeah. 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 It's true.
We have to let ourselves get to the end of ourselves. And, we hate being in that place. Thank you for sharing that story, because I think a lot of people will relate. We start like scheming, and I found myself doing the same thing. I was in an insurance issue with my other organization. I teach aerial silks. You cannot even imagine how horrible that is to insure.
I can imagine, because my daughter took it, and I was just like, oh, you're going to break something. Oh, over here. Oh, don't drop on your head. Yeah. Yes.
Yeah. So I'm a professional performer, and I have a studio, and, I had battles. I'm praying. I'm having my parents pray. I'm like, we need to be insured. And God came through the very last week of what I needed. And I was like, oh, of course you would. But here I doubted for that whole time, sleepless nights, everything going, are you going to come through? And yet he had provided me the space, everything. So I was like, okay, yeah. But
and we're just finite. We're just finite human beings who are needing to go, back to the Lord all the time.
Absolutely.
Back to the Lord. And you just said, you got to come to the end of yourself. And it kind of brings it back to my little story about the mouse in the sea, because he eventually does. He gets to the end of himself, and he looks around and he goes, well, shoot, I'm screwed now, because he didn't ask for help when he needed it. And eventually, of course, his friends come around, and I think of how many times, I've gotten a phone call from someone who said, I noticed that you didn't seem like yourself, or I noticed that we need to be willing to just notice, we look for the little things, the little signs that maybe somebody's a little bit off, and be brave enough to say, hey, are you okay? Or not even just brave enough, just willing to open your heart a little bit, even when you feel like you don't have the margin to do it.
Right. Absolutely.
To say, hey, can I pray for you? So important.
Yeah. A while back, you said, I didn't have the support I needed, so I created it myself. Can you talk a little bit about that process and how, once you realized you didn't have the support you needed, how did you start cultivating that community for yourself?
Well, it's actually a super fun story because here I'm this, brand new homeschool mom. And my husband moved to Northern Washington, which we kind of were one of the reasons I pulled her out of school because I thought we're going to move. And we did. Yeah. And now I'm up in this brand new community. My husband's pastoring and I'm new at homeschooling. I had given my eye teeth, just have a homeschool mom say, come to my house and watch how I do it. Right. Because I just had never seen it. And everyone in my family was like, you're crazy. What about socialization? Why are you doing that? You're going to ruin your kids, blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
Well, so I have that in my mind. And also I don't know anybody because I'm in a brand new community. And I finally sit down with my kids one morning over, I don't know, Lucky Charms or something. And I said, hey, what would you guys think if we started a homeschool cooperative? Like I read about this thing called a homeschool co-op. And I think it works like this. I think we get together one day a week and then the parents teach classes and then you guys would meet other homeschool kids and I would meet other homeschool moms. And what do you guys think? Well, they loved the idea. So we had the benefit of my husband being a pastor. So I had a building, right? I had a place. Yeah. And so my kids and I made posters and they just said, hey, come to an information meeting. Would you like to find community? Would you like to meet other homeschoolers? We're going to start a homeschool co-op. And we put it in every grocery store, this is before Starbucks was woke and awful, like in every Starbucks, in every coffee shop, every library, every place that we could put these posters, we did. And then we gave them I think 2 weeks notice. And then we put chairs out that night. And I think I put 15 chairs out. I thought if we could get 15 people to come to this little meeting, I was going to feel like I won the lottery. And 70 people showed up.
Oh, wow.
And I realized that night, I am not alone.
Yeah.
I'm not alone. And that was the beginning. I mean, within a year, we had, I think, 300 people that were meeting at this homeschool cooperative. And then my husband and I moved to Southern Washington State where he worked in another church and the same thing happened again. And so I started another homeschool co-op and then that one grew and we split into 2 and then that one grew into 3. And eventually, because I've always had the sort of Mr. Mouse mentality, I love to help people. And eventually we ended up planting over 100 homeschool cooperatives. So we've planted them all over the United States, a couple of them in Canada. We even traveled to the Ramstein Air Base and planted a homeschool co-op there in Germany. And so that was how that started. And now we're kind of doing the same thing here with the Homeschool Resource Center. The plan is to help start these in other places around the country because this is a full-time center. It doesn't just meet one day a week like the homeschool co-op did. But I think it goes back. It's a biblical principle of kind of the Good Samaritan. When you see someone needs help, the question you need to ask yourself is, Lord, what is in my hand? Yeah. What is the skill set you've given me? Do I have the time? Is this the right season in my life? And for me, it was the right season because my children were little. And now, I've got one daughter still that I'm homeschooling and she's going to be in high school next year. And I think I'm so thankful for the years that God gave us to pour into the lives of those people who are around us. And I raised my kids that way. So I actually wrote, if people are interested in finding out how to start a homeschool co-op or how to start a homeschool resource center, they can go to firmlyplantedfamily.org and I think click on the store. I've actually written a manual for how to do it. So people can do that. But this building that we're in now is just a real answer to prayer on the heels of the Rona and all the things, we grew and grew and grew. And in January of this last year, June of this last year, we were gifted a $16 million building. So we're in now a ginormous building. People can find it at firmlyplantedfamily.org. They can see if they click on the Homeschool Resource Center. We do all kinds of things here. I mean, we do marriage and family things, but the building is used during the week as a homeschool resource center. And then on the weekends, we have marriage retreats and that kind of thing here. So, awesome. So God has been really, really faithful through seasons of doubt and drought. I think it's just staying in there and realizing, okay, God's doing something and it's a beautiful, and everybody has a part to play. Everyone does. I write, one of the other things that we have done for, 8 years or so is I run an organization called Faith That Speaks. And so I always ask women, if your faith found its voice, what would God have you say?
Yeah.
If your faith found its feet, where would God take you? You know, I think so often we're afraid. And so I write Bible studies every month. There's maybe a couple thousand women that do that with me. And people can find that too at faiththatspeaks.com. Okay. And they can sign up to do those Bible studies with me. Right now, we're studying the book of Esther. Next month, I'm going to be taking them, and we're going to look very briefly at 12 women in the Bible who came from different places, and God used them in extraordinary ways. So that's a lot of and the reason I do it is because I want these women to know you were born for this time, right? You could have been born in the 1800s or born 100 years from now, but you weren't. You're here in 2024. Why? Because God has a plan. So what is it?
Yeah.
You know, Lord, what do you want? What do you want me to do? What are the experiences in my life that have shaped me that you would use so that I can bring you glory? What does that look like? Absolutely. So super excited about that. I have a women's retreat that's coming up the first weekend in March. Here at Firmly Planted, it's called Shine. And just teaching women, like, we can shine. Like, in the midst of the darkness, we're called to shine. What does that look like? Well, I think helping. I think it starts there, right? Look outside your little bubble, outside your Facebook account or your TikTok account or whatever it is you're doing, and just go, okay, Lord, I'm here. You know, I'm reporting for duty. What does it look like? Yeah,
and I think we compartmentalize those callings too much to be something that, well, this is a godly thing to do. So God would call me to do either this, or this, but we don't give God the freedom to be as unique as He created us.
That's right.
And a lot of times we have to be willing to look into those things that maybe others might even judge us about as His calling. You know, that's something that God has been teaching me a lot with my aerial background. I mean, I do it to worship, and so we go into retirement communities. I have a performance team, and we perform to worship music, and it's something that, you know, a lot of times these places that do what I do exploit girls, and instead I bring God's glory into those places through that art form. But I could have easily said, no, God, you can't do this. That's not, you know, it's not where you're at. But just to allow God to, you know, and the same thing is true for our parents, you know, that say, you know, that's a great story for Heidi and how she formed her community. But, you know, I don't think I could reach out to anybody. Yeah. I mean, for my family and creating a homeschool community, we created a pod before pods were pods. Yeah. You know, 2 other families, and they all both had kids on the spectrum like I did. And that was our community. And that was a perfect community for my family and those families. That's all we needed. And it's what God used to nurture our families. So I think in so many ways, we do limit God instead of just saying, like you said, here's what I've got. Here's what you've given me. Now, what do you want me to do with it? And not bury that treasure, but instead allow God to grow it.
Yeah. And it takes courage to do it. You know, I think you have to be willing to fail.
Yeah.
Right. You have to be willing to walk through some deep water. You have to be willing to be uncomfortable. But I think there's a blessing. The blessing is found in obedience, right? And then in what God does after that, and just really leaving those results to Him. And I love that God does that. You know, to me, there's a blessing in even in the failing. You know, I ran for Congress a couple of years ago, and shoot fire. I don't recommend that to, you know, most people.
I ran for school board, so I know, I get it.
But I'm not sorry. I'm not sorry I did it. I learned so much in that time. And I mean, I had, you know, articles written about me. I had the opportunity to meet with President Trump for about an hour by myself. I had, you know, all these things, and I didn't win. You know, I came pretty close to winning, but it's a whole big long story. It doesn't matter. The point is, the winning was found, and my husband said this to me the night of the primary. We won when we obeyed, and that's what I want your listeners to hear. You win. Obedience is the winning. That's how we win. And we follow the Lord and we do what he asks us to do. Like a lot of people will say, I felt the Lord wanted me to have children, and then my family, it doesn't look like I thought it was going to look, or maybe it's different than I wanted it to be. And yet God was saying, no, this is exactly what I have for you. And I'm trying to teach you something. I want you to lean into me. I want you to learn, and God's going to grow you in a beautiful way. And Absolutely. That's when we win. We win in the obedience.
Mm-hmm. Yes, because we just never know down the line when those lessons that we've learned, like you said, you learned something, even though it didn't turn out the way you wanted it to.
Yeah.
Well, how is God going to use that? He will. He will never leave anything that we won't need to use in the future.
Yeah. So amazing. Mm-hmm. Yeah. He's good like that.
Yeah, absolutely. Nothing goes to waste. So how about people who feel like, I'm just going to be a burden to others? Because I know a lot of our parents, they have extremely needy lives. And I think that's one of the big things that parents come back to is, I'm just going to be a burden. I don't want to be a burden to others. So I'm just going to hold back, and then everything will be fine.
I think I heard this occasionally when I was running for Congress, right? And I hear it a lot in the homeschool community. And there was a point in which I didn't want to ask for help because, the big thing that you have to do when you're running for office, especially federal office, is raise money. It's all about that. It's raising money because the ads don't buy themselves, right? So you have to raise. So in my case, I think they wanted me to raise at $1.2 million. And it was, I hate asking for money. I hate it. I hate it. I hate it. I hate it. I hate it in the nonprofit world. Yeah. I just hate it. I'm kind of I'll get my own job. I'll make my own way. I'll buy my own groceries. Thank you very much. Right. Again, not asking for help even when you should. Mm-hmm. But someone said something to me one time, and I thought was so beautiful in the midst of that run where I was, on the phone 6 hours a day fundraising, trying to call random strangers up and ask them for money. It was awful.
Right. Yeah.
And one day I was just sitting in my office, just like, I hate this. And my friend came to me and she's like, you don't know, but that you're robbing somebody of the opportunity to help. And they've been saying, how can I help? How could I get involved? And God in his providence brings people with money to people who have a vision. And now you have provision, right?
Yeah.
And God works that way. Well, I think when we say, well, I don't want to be a burden. I mean, that's what I was saying. I'm calling these people. I'm like, I don't want to be a burden. I don't want to be a burden. I learned, and I saw this over and over and over again, that people would say, thank you for, I've been wondering, what to do. How can I get involved? And maybe my little $10 a month. Well, that $10 a month turned into $20,000 a month, right? Because that's what happens in God's economy, and God multiplies things. And Absolutely. So if I had kept this mentality of, I'm a burden, I'm asking for people to help, and they've already got busy lives. Everybody's got something that they're going on, that they're doing. You just don't know what God's doing in the life of that other person.
Right.
And so it really isn't. I mean, it's kind of, you think about it, and this is what was pointed out to me. She said, you're kind of being prideful. You're just like, you're assuming that you know the heart of that other person. You're assuming that you know what the outcome will be, but you don't. And it just really, I think it just kind of goes back to, we were made for such a time as this. We need each other.
Absolutely.
And I watched my assistant, Melissa Crabtree, who's worked for me for like 13 years. She's a special needs teacher by trade. So she went to school to become a special needs educator, and it's her heart and her passion. And she spent a lot of, in her summers, a lot of times she would do the Johnny and Me, the camps and things like that.
Yep.
And this last fall, one of her kiddos that she had worked with for a long time, this girl had lived with a severe disability her whole life. And she passed away, I think in her early 20s. And Melissa was telling us of all of the ways that Megan brought joy into her life. The joy that girl brought to Melissa's life was, you can't put a price on it. Right. And what God did through that young girl in the lives of so many people. And what would have happened if her mom would have said, I just don't want to be a burden.
Right.
We would have missed out on the joy of Megan. right? We would have missed out on that, you know, and that was really
Absolutely.
Melissa's take
that.
on it, and so sweet. And I love the heart that God gave to Melissa for Megan, especially, right? It's just so, it's so sweet. And so we don't know what the blessing of your child is going to be in the life of somebody else who maybe just needed that special person in their life. And I just think, boy, you know, we got to hold our lives, I think, a little more open-handed.
Yeah.
You know, like, all right, Lord, I have this. Show me what happens when I give this to you. What if instead of doing this, if I open my hands?
Yeah.
And, you know, I mean, sometimes the fear is, right, we get our hands slapped. We've all had that happen.
Oh, yeah.
But I think it's worth it.
It is.
Right? The risk is worth it because the payoff is so amazing.
It is. Yeah. Yeah. And just pray. God will provide what you need in the right timing. Yeah. But we do have to ask him too. Yeah. That's, just over and over again. He does. So
good.
Yeah. So we got some questions from viewers ahead of time. Then a lot of these were off topic, but your agent said
it's because it's me. I talk about everything. So.
Anyways, okay. So here's one that oftentimes I would answer from a very different perspective, but I would love your answer on this. Alana asked, how do I know if homeschool is better than public school with an IEP in place?
Well, several of my sisters have kids with that are on IEPs, and I will tell you, my sister, one of them in particular, that was her question, right? I don't even know. I should just leave my kids. I am telling you now, it's been 5 years. Yep. The work that my sister has done in shaping the hearts of her kids is better than any IEP on the planet.
Oh, yes.
Every day of the week and twice on Sunday. Because it's more than just education. We've made an idol out of education in this country. Oh, yeah. And so rather than we skip the heart work and we just go, well, that's the extra thing that I'll do at night when we do our 5-minute devotions before bed. Right. But the heart work is actually the most important work. The education piece is second to that. And I was just talking with my husband over dinner the other night, and we were talking about one of my nephews in particular and just saying he is a different kid. He's high functioning autistic, but he is a different kid because of the love that my sister has poured into him through homeschooling, right? She did that because homeschooling gives you the one thing that you can never get back when you give it to the public school, and that's time. Absolutely. It's time. And so, to me, your children, even if they're on an IEP, or even if you think they're not absorbing all the bad messages, trust me when I say they are absorbing it. Yeah. They're absolutely absorbing it. Your children are soaking that in like a sponge. Transgenderism, the push in this country towards socialism, all of these things are subtle and not so subtle messages that your children really are absorbing. And homeschool is infinitely better.
Awful. Yeah, absolutely. And I've seen the same thing with my son too. When he came home at 5, he was in a private school, but now he's 26, and the projection for him was to be living in an assisted living. He's now living on his own, and he's an engineer.
Wow. See,
there's a huge difference that happens because you pour into the heart of the child, and then they realize, I can do something. This person believes in me. They're investing in me. And that's the message you're giving your child over and over again, instead of, well, you have these issues and the school is going to take care of your issues. Yep. And we downplay what God is doing in the lives of our kids and the plans that he has for them. Instead of, we just label them and say, well, they've got better answers than God, who gave you to me as my child and said I can parent you. I love that.
Yeah.
So one of the other questions was, and I think you already answered this, Don was wondering if there were going to be any trainings or plans from your program to teach others how to start a co-op, which you said, firmlyplantedfamily.org.
Yeah, firmlyplantedfamily.org has 2 sort of manuals that you can download. But also we typically do open our facility. So we have this is what I've been telling people. If you're interested in just kind of seeing it, come out, like the marriage weekend, Laugh Away to Better Marriage is being held over the 16th and 17th of February. You can find that stuff at Firmly Planted Family, I think, /events. But then also, I will do a special thing here for my women's conference the first weekend in March. And then probably later on in the spring or early summer, whenever I'm not traveling and speaking, we will usually open up the center once a year, and we just invite people to come from all over the country. And then we basically spend a weekend training and teaching and showing how to do it. So it's a huge undertaking, but also God can do it. Yeah. And I'd love to see these in every city in America. I think if we had resource centers like the one that we have here in every city in America, the public school system would buckle under that.
Absolutely. Yeah. People just need to know where they can go and find, just a community and people that are like-minded. And it is, you can find that. You do have to hunt and peck through Facebook.
Yeah, it's true. It's so true.
And then just not get caught up in it.
Yeah, so true.
So let's do one more question from a viewer or from a that was submitted ahead of time. What about motivation? Brandy said, it's difficult to motivate my son even when I try to make fun for him. Do you have any tips?
Well, I think the tip for you, Mama, is just stay in there, right? How often have you made dinner when you didn't want to do it?
Right.
How often have you unloaded the dishwasher, when you were just like, seriously, like or run another load of laundry, or sat down and did a math lesson when you would have loved to have been doing anything else but that. I think I love, you have to be in tune with the heart of your son. I think especially boys, and keep your eye on what you're trying to do. Years ago, I was teaching history with my kids. I have 2 boys and 5 girls.
Okay.
And our son, who is now 26, was probably 7 or 8 at the time. And I tend to do all of I'm kind of a one-room schoolhouse. So I was reading, Thomas Jefferson. We were studying Monticello and the founding fathers and blah, blah, blah. And when it's over, when I'm done reading to the kids and talking to them, showing them pictures, whatever, I had the older girls kind of go and write like a report. It's kind of the end of a unit, kind of a report on things. Well, I asked Skylar, could you write me a paragraph about Thomas Jefferson? And like 2-3 sentences. Didn't even have to be, 3 sentences. Come on. Right. I went in the other room to move the clothes from the washing machine to the dryer and make sure the crock pot was plugged in and all the things. And then when I went back to check on my son, he was just like in a puddle. His hand was like, I can't, it hurts, man. It's Friday. I was like, oh my word. Like, I'm like, I don't know who's feeling more upset right now, you or me.
Right.
And I remember just going into my back bedroom and calling my husband, as I often did. And I was just like, I can't do this homeschool thing. I can't do it. All they ever do is complain and lose their math books. That's all.
Yeah.
And he said, what's going on? I told him. 3 sentences about Thomas Jefferson. He goes, okay. He goes, Heidi, I'm not trying to hurt your feelings, but what's the goal? Do you want him to write about Thomas Jefferson, or do you want him to learn to love to write?
Right.
And I thought, well, I want him to learn to love to write. I want him to want to write. And he said, what does he love to do? Well, he was an 8-year-old boy. What does every 8-year-old boy love? They love Legos, right? So I went back to the kitchen, and instead of getting mad at him, I said, Skylar, listen, what if, instead of writing about Thomas Jefferson, what if you wrote me a little report on the history of Legos? And he kind of lifted his head up off the table, and he looked at me and he goes, like, I think he was just waiting for, like, what's the punchline, what's the joke? And he just said, well, really? Are you really write about Legos? And I said, yeah. I said, I will search the internet with you. And we can find some articles and some pictures. That kid lit up like a Christmas tree. So we downloaded like all the early pictures of what Lego used to look like. And it was kind of a fascinating thing.
Oh, it is. Yeah.
Yeah. And then I just left him with a bunch of piece of paper that we'd printed off, pictures and things like that. And then I left him alone for like an hour and a half. And that kid wrote a full, it wasn't professional, but he wrote a full report. And I learned several things that day. A, he was lying to me. He could absolutely do it.
Yep.
And B, a lot of what I did with him had to do, like, I had to pick which hill I was going to die on.
Yeah.
And that day, I picked the right hill. There have been other days when I picked the wrong hill, you know, and I died on a hill that I was just like, well, that wasn't worth it, you know. So you need discernment from the Lord. I mean, I think you just need to go, okay, Lord,
So true.
what's the hill? Like, if this isn't the hill, show me. And sometimes, you know what? Sometimes the hill is worth dying on, you know? I mean, I've had knockdown dragouts with my kids over just something stupid like unload the dishwasher. No, you are going to do that. I remember one time one of my kids, when you have 7 kids, I got material for days, right? I remember one of my daughters just, again, you know, just stubborn as all get out. And I just remember looking at her and I just said, I am going to win this. So we can do this all day long. I got all day, right? That's the benefit of homeschooling. I don't have to ship you off to somebody else who's going to give up on 5 minutes because she got 27 other kids she has to deal with. Right. I'm going to win this thing. And I remember her just looking at me like, shoot, my mom's going to win it. Right. You know, she knew. But there were plenty of hills I died on I wish I hadn't died on. And then there were other times when the Lord just says, you know what, this is hard. You know, life is hard. What does Candace Owen say? Get a helmet, right? So sometimes you have to just say, okay, we're going to suck it up. You're going to write this report on Thomas Jefferson, or you are going to do your math. And then other times you have to be like, okay, never mind Thomas Jefferson. Let's talk. Let's do something different, right?
Right.
And that takes discernment, and it takes you have to be willing to shift course when you need to. But at the end of the day, you're after the heart of your child, and so it's up to the mom to know: is this child just being manipulative? Is he being a brat? Are we having an obedience issue? Or can I shift and make this process a little more palatable?
Right. Yeah.
You got to walk with the Lord.
Exactly. Because those lessons, again, like we were talking about earlier, they're lessons that our kids are going to take forward. And we don't know what he has planned for them, but he does. And so if we're listening and we give up when we need to give up and we push on when we need to push on, then we're doing what's right.
That's right.
But yeah, it's all.
And you can't say like, here's what you should do. Like you just like I am loath to say that to another mom because I want her to know, oh, hey, you got to listen to the Lord. You know, let's talk about what your child's, what was he like yesterday, the day before? You know, because moms write into me. I do something called Mailbox Monday on my podcast every Monday, and we answer dozens and dozens and dozens of questions. And I get the question a lot where the mom's like, it's almost always the boys. Although my most stubborn child was a girl, but it's almost always the boys. And these moms are just like, I can't do it. Well, don't you think that's what the enemy wants? The enemy wants you to give up and just go, you know what, forget it. Forget it. I'm going to put you back in school. You know how many times, Peggy, I looked at that little yellow bus and was just like, my life would be so much easier if I just took all 7 of y'all and just put you on a bus. You know, I could get a shower by myself. That would be weird, you know. And God in his mercy was like, no, we're going to do it. I'm going to help you stay in there. And I think that's what moms need to hear. He'll help you. Stay in there.
Yeah. And little by little, we start to learn how to listen a little better.
Yeah, it's true. So true.
Much. Well, thank you so much, Heidi. This has been such an enjoyable conversation. And I hope it has encouraged you, our listeners, just about pursuing community and about not having to be perfect and do it all yourself. I mean, that's the premise of this new book that you have out, Heidi, The Mouse and the Sea by Brave Publishing. And I will share all the links on the show notes, both on YouTube as well as the podcast. So you can click on those links as well as the other ones that Heidi talked about with her nonprofit and all the other things that she has going on. So just appreciate you, Heidi, all that you're doing, all the encouragement you provide, and the truth that you're speaking into the homeschooling community. It is so, so very important. And you're feeling God's calling for your life, and it's exciting to watch. So thanks so much for being a guest and being on the show.
Thanks for having me, Peggy. Let's do it again.
Absolutely. So next week, we are going to be talking about how to time box school days based on student energy rhythms. So you'll want to be back for that conversation. But until then, thanks for everybody for joining us. Make sure you visit spedhomeschool.com. We are a nonprofit, and we would love your donation to keep our ministry going. But otherwise, we'll see you next week. So take care, and God bless everyone. See you then. Bye. I want to take just a second to thank the team at Life Audio for their partnership with us on this podcast. If you go to lifeaudio.com, you'll find dozens of other faith-centered podcasts in their network. They've got shows about prayer, Bible study, parenting, and more.
This has been Empowering Homeschool Conversations with Peggy Ployer.
I'm Dr. Lauren DeVille, a practicing naturopathic physician in Tucson, Arizona. In my podcast, Christian Natural Health, my guests and I discuss topics ranging from nutrition, sleep, hormone balancing, and exercise to specific health concerns like hair loss, anxiety, and hypothyroidism. I'll also interweave biblical principles as they apply throughout the podcast because true health is body, mind, and spirit. Listen to Christian Natural Health for free at lifeaudio.com or on your favorite podcast platform.